Oh, this is going to be really cool.
He's just 34 years old, already a billionaire 3 times over.
You want to play guitar?
He's the ultimate game changer.
You're living large.
Yes.
But you might not have heard his name. Brian Chesky is the guy who runs and co-founded the home-sharing website Airbnb.
Were you surprised at how quickly this concept grew? I mean, at some point, did you stand back and your partners and go, whoa, what did we do?
Well, yes. I never even heard the word entrepreneur growing up.
To me, the story of Brian Chesky is the story of sort of the American dream.
New York Times columnist and CNBC anchor Andrew Ross Sorkin says he's a visionary.
Brian Chesky has single-handedly revolutionized the hospitality world. He's revolutionized tourism. He's revolutionized real estate. And I would argue he has revolutionized trust, the way we trust each other.
Airbnb connects strangers, both owners and renters, for short-term stays. Owners post pictures and descriptions of their properties, which could be spare bedrooms or entire homes. One attraction for renters is that the rates are usually lower than hotels.
We didn't invent the idea of somebody staying in someone else's home. I think what we did is created a simple way with trust to connect people all over the world, globally, at a scale that has never been seen before.
Airbnb now has more than 2 million listings in 191 countries. The company gets a cut of each rental and is now worth more than almost every giant hotel chain. Such a big success, financier Warren Buffett wishes he had come up with the idea.
I mean, why couldn't I think of it? But I did, you know. And Brian took something very ordinary, lodging, been around for millennia, and he saw a different way to do it.
Brian Chesky grew up in a suburb of Albany, New York. He was a star hockey player and an artist. His parents, Deborah and Robert, are retired social workers. They're still surprised at the path their son took.
Honestly, this is the last thing we would have thought of.
He was very much into art and sports. At a very young age, got him a drawing board, sketch pads. He just kept drawing and doing all of that type of stuff.
That led him to the Rhode Island School of Design, where Chesky showed off a bit of a cheeky streak, dancing to Billie Jean at graduation. After college, he ended up in San Francisco. Chesky was looking for work and nearly broke when he and his roommate Joe Gebbia had a eureka moment.
We couldn't pay rent, and this design conference was coming to San Francisco. We realized we have some extra space. Why don't we provide a house for these designers that wouldn't have any beds? Joe inflated some air beds, and we called it the Air Bed and Breakfast. It was only a way to really host these 3 people that one weekend. This is a recreation of the original apartment that Joe and I started Airbnb in that very first weekend in October 2007. Almost every little piece has been kind of recreated in an homage to remember.
So this was kind of the original crash pad, if you will.
This is the original place, yep. And one of the couches, you know, was in this room is the one that they stayed on.
And so you had couches and you had an air mattress.
Yeah, air mattresses, yeah.
In many ways, that was the bedrock, the whole idea,
yeah,
was that people have that experience.
Right. That first weekend, what I did not predict was 3 people living with you. It takes like a year or 2-year relationship, and it contracts it into a matter of days.
You're sharing the kitchen,
yeah,
you're sharing
exactly.
the bathroom.
And by doing that, you get to know somebody really quickly. You become extremely close. And so I remember Joe and I are waving our guests goodbye, and we immediately thought, if people knew or could experience what we just experienced, this would be an idea that would spread around the world.
So what are these rooms?
The roommates quickly realized they'd stumbled on a concept for a whole new business. Starting with a simple website, Chesky and Gebbia and a third partner, Nathan Blucharzik, recruited others to rent their places. Week by week, year by year, the listings grew from one city and one country to another.
What do you know now that you didn't know when you started, the pitfalls, the problems, the issues?
I think, you know, a lot of people, when you start a company, they think it's all about having an idea. When you run a company, you realize you need to have an idea like every hour.
Maybe his best idea was to ask for advice. He sought out luminaries like Mark Zuckerberg, Disney CEO Bob Iger, and Warren Buffett.
We talked for hours and hours. I love talking to a guy like Brian. I learned something. You know, he's enthusiastic about his business like I'm enthusiastic about mine. It's always fun to talk to somebody who's excited about what they're doing.
And they offer 2.25 million homes all over the world.
And in the 9 years since Airbnb started, Chesky has become a titan in what's now called the sharing economy. That includes companies like Uber and WeWork.
Thank you, everyone, for coming today.
But Chesky's and Airbnb's success has not been without growing pains.
I don't want to dissuade you of the view that there are real questions here about this business model, because there are. The idea that there are homes, apartments, and other pieces of real estate that were never supposed to be rented, right, that now are, right? How do the neighbors feel about that? That's real.
You know, it was ironic here in your home city where this all started.
Yeah.
There was a ballot measure last November, essentially aimed at placing a number of restrictions on Airbnb. How did that feel?
It was tough, but I totally understand that ideas that are new, it's easy to misunderstand them.
The San Francisco measure targeting Airbnb was defeated, but criticism continues. This past week, TV ads sponsored by a group of housing advocates and the hotel industry alleged racism in the Airbnb booking process.
I am a black woman. I get declined all the time on Airbnb.
New York City public advocate Letitia James is a leading critic.
What they need to do is revise the discrimination policy and issue a zero tolerance policy for discrimination.
Airbnb announced on Thursday it is undergoing a comprehensive review to make sure everyone is treated fairly. Chesky tweeted that racism and discrimination have no place on Airbnb. And there have been other complaints about safety, breaking zoning laws, and not enough vetting of owners and guests.
So how does Airbnb as an organization make sure that everyone's okay?
Well, the foundation of this is really having real identity. One of the core ideas we had is there's no strangers on Airbnb, there's no anonymity. We know who the people are. So having identity is core to us, and so we have this program called Verified ID, where we ask you, and this is continually stuff we're rolling out, we ask you to put on record a copy of your government ID.
And there are other issues.
Unfortunately, Airbnb is taking too many affordable housing units off the market.
It's your contention that some of the places that Airbnb has on the market would otherwise be available for rent.
It is illegal to rent out an apartment for less than 30 days. But unfortunately, a significant number of individuals are using sites as Airbnb to rent out their apartments that otherwise could be used for affordable housing in New York City.
Are you undermining the rental market in some of these communities, places where the demand exceeds the supply?
I mean, I think we have a very primary view, which is that we want to be part of a solution in cities, not part of a problem. So we only want people to share homes they live in. I believe in a city, even if there's a kind of rental contraction, if people are renting the homes they live in, then by definition, they're not taking homes off the market. And in fact, this is helping them stay in their homes.
The reality, critics say, is that thousands of New York apartments on Airbnb are not owner-occupied. Yet to untold numbers of people making extra money, Chesky's a lifesaver.
I think he's provided a great service.
Nebraska homemaker Carrie Hoiberg and her husband rent out this spare room above their garage for $75 a night to help pay for their daughter's college tuition.
It provides extra income that we normally wouldn't have.
Brian Chesky's latest market may surprise you, Cuba. We met up at an Airbnb in Havana.
I've never been to another place like this before in my life.
Reality check time.
Yes.
Former hockey playing kid who grew up outside Albany in Cuba, part of a presidential trip touting a multi-billion-dollar company, and oh, by the way, in a communist country. How does that feel?
Well, you put it that way. It's very surreal for me to be here. I never imagined growing up ever traveling to Cuba, let alone having a platform where we have over 4,000 homes here. And so it's just incredibly humbling and gratifying for me. Casa del Cielo.
Amidst the vintage cars and a skyline essentially unchanged since 1958, Chesky is pushing the future fast forward.
You do battle in San Francisco, your hometown,
Yes.
yet you come here and you're blossoming. This is your
Absolutely.
fastest growing market. How is that?
Havana is growing faster than New York was at its age 1 year in. So every time you see one...
In Havana, Chesky and Airbnb were held up as shining examples of American entrepreneurship by President Obama himself.
Well, what's the valuation now?
Quite a lot.
Don't be shy. How
25 billion.
25 billion with a B?
Yeah.
Are you competing with hotels, or are there people who would stay in this gorgeous house here and take this trip because they can stay in this house?
I think that, for us to win, first of all, I don't think anyone has to lose.
So you can peacefully coexist with hotels, everybody thrives?
I believe we can. It's a multi-trillion-dollar industry. There are billions of trips every year. Hotels are doing better than ever since we started Airbnb, and I think they're going to continue to do well.
But of course, Airbnb can offer a few settings a hotel chain can't. Among unique listings recently, in California, a mushroom dome. In Paris, a chance to stay in the catacombs. And in Amsterdam, an entire grounded KLM airliner was for rent. With all the Airbnb success, Chesky's personal net worth is now estimated at more than $3.3 billion. And just this week, Chesky and his Airbnb co-founders signed up for the Giving Pledge, once again following the guidance of Warren Buffett.
Well, the Giving Pledge just asks people to pledge morally, not legally, that very wealthy people, that they will give away at least half of their money to help other people, either during their lifetime or at death. And what they can do for humanity, beyond what they've done in their business, can be huge.
Well, for now at least, Chesky is one of the richest young people on the planet. He and his girlfriend, artist Alyssa Patel, travel the world together. So I had to ask, when you travel, do you stay with an Airbnb host?
Of course, always. I just came back from Tokyo with my girlfriend. We did a week vacation. We stayed in 2 different Airbnbs.
Do they know who you are?
I try not to go out of the way to tell them who I am because I want to see the experience that our other guests are getting. I don't want to get like a special Airbnb founder experience. But yeah, sometimes they figure it out.
Coming up, a fighter